requested by Colonel Mangena to do a peer review on this matter, correct?
That is correct.
Now, before we go in depth regarding what you did, I want to give you background regarding his testimony. Now, I'm not going to dwell much because that evidence is off record, but because you were not here, I'll give that to you. He says that he received 2 test fires from the exhibit firearm. Those test fires, TB1 and TB2, were fired by Warrant Officer Rulofse. Now, the first port of call, when he received a request to do a comparison examination on this matter, was to compare Exhibit F, which is the exhibit bullet in this case, with the 2 test fires of Rulofse. Which I
exhibit F TB1 or TB2.
Yes, I hear.
And for contextual purposes, TB1 and TB2 are FMJ type bullets or ammunition.
Okay, the TB1 or TB2 FMJ.
Understand?
Yes.
And according to the testimony of Colonel Mangena, when he compared the exhibit bullet, Exhibit F, with TB1 and TB2, the FMJs, he observed that the FMJs did not impart sufficient marks. Therefore, as you correctly testified, he had to go and test fire bullets that are closely resembling the material used in the exhibit bullet.
TB1 TB2 nalenhlamvu lena evela endaweni esigame kwabona ukuthi nje lezi inhlamvu lezi eqinisweni akuzange zibe nezimpawu ezanele baphoqelela ukuthi aqhubele phambili ke eyodubula ezinye inhlamvu njengoba usushilo ke ukuthi ke ezinensimbi efanayo nalensimbi yakhe inhlamvu lena ephuma endaweni esigame.
Yes, I understand.
Yes.
And in that regard, he then went to shoot further tests, further 8 tests.
Which
are TB3 to TB10.
Yes, I understand.
Yes.
And from those 8 test fires, 2 were PNP make FMJs.
Yes, I understand.
Yes, sir.
The 2 CMJ type fire bullets were of AMG manufacture.
I understand.
Yes, sir.
The further 2 CMJs were of 6 hour manufacture.
And this is the FMJ as 6 hour.
Yes, I understand.
And the last 2 were of a make that he never recorded, and at the time he testified, he could not recall those last 2.
Manje uthike lezi ezimbili ezingasidubula akasakazange abhale phansi ukuthi zazakwe ubani azange kwazi lesiqiniseko sokuthi zazakwe yipi inkampani.
Yes, I understand.
Yes.
And also for contextual purposes, he says that he fired all of those tests successively, randomly, without noting which one was an FMJ, which one was a CMJ, and amongst the CMJs without noting if this one is ANG, 6 hour, or the unknown make.
Thina sangeke aqaphela ukuthi ke njoba edubula kwakuyiziphi inhlamvu asidubula wavele wadubula nje engabheki nokuthi lezi inhlamvu asidubulayo zasathiwa yiziphi inkampani.
I understand.
Now let me posit there, Lieutenant Colonel SEREO. In your lab, regarding the processes and procedures, is there a particular worksheet that directs you what to complete as you do your examination, comparison, and the like?
Manje ke lapha ke nginqubo yenu enisenza ngayo lapha laboratory khona yini worksheet enisenzisayo nikhombisayo ukuthi nifanele nenzeni nibhaleni?
There is a worksheet
Yebo
that
khona
we
worksheet.
complete.
Can you elaborate on that?
Ngakwazi
Lieutenant
ukuchazela
Colonel?
abenzana ngalo.
The worksheet, each and every examination type that we conduct, there will be worksheets associated with that type of examination.
Kuzo zonke inhlobo ke zokuhlola esinazo khona worksheet ehambelana nanoma yiluphi uhlobo esilwenzayo.
So the worksheets are designed for recording.
Manje ke lama worksheet enzelwe nje ukuthi ke kubikwe
What the examiner discovers during the examination process.
ukubikwayo ukuthi ke lo ohlolayo utholani emsebenzini wakhe ukuhlola.
Okay, now, besides the worksheet, say for example, there's information further. You've done several tests and there's incomplete space to record your workings. Are you required to have a notation or recordal on any document further?
Manje uma usuphelele indawo lapho ungabhala khona njengoba lokuqhubeka uhlola uyavunyelwa yini ukuthi uthathe olunye uhlobo lwekhasi ubhale kulona?
Yeah, the worksheet is precisely meant for notes.
Manje le worksheet engikhuluma ngayo yakhelwe ukuthi ithathe amanothi.
Now, back to the subject matter of your peer review, you are then given, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you try to answer that under Mr. Mngomezulu's cross-examination, but Colonel Mangena says he gave you all the test files for you to compare, correct?
Khona mangena uthe ukunike zonke inhlamvu ukuthi uziqhathanisa kunjalo?
That is correct.
Yebo kunjalo.
And you see the dilemma is this. That's why I'm asking you about the worksheet, because amongst those 10 test files, 4 of them are FMJ. That will be the 2 FMJs by Colonel Mangena, the 2 FMJs by Warrant Officer Hulofse.
Ngibuza ngoba ke ngibona ukuthi khona inhlamvu ezine ezohlobo le-FMJ ngoba khona ezimbili inhlamvu ezu-FMJ ezivela ku-Colonel Mangena nezimbili ezivela ku-Warrant Officer Rulofse.
I understand.
Now, the point is this, and I've given you the context of Mangena to say the FMJs did not impart sufficient individual marks for me to make an identification. That is a positive match.
Ngoba ke uthi Mangena lezi inhlamvu ezohlobo le-FMJ azizange zibe nezimpawu ezilingene ukuthi angakwazi ukuthi ahlonze ngokugcwele.
Yes, I hear that.
Ngiyakuzwa lokho.
Now, in that context, let us jump onto this aspect, because I'm going to be up and down, so bear with me. The AFT has got a theory of identification, and they also have got what they call the AFT range of conclusions. Are you aware of that?
I am.
AFT ke inendlela esebenza ngayo uyakwazi lokho?
I am aware.
Yebo ngiyazi.
And what are the range of conclusions that we can reach as ballistic experts after our examination?
Manje ke uyiziphi ke lezi nqomo umuntu angasifinyelela emva kokuthi ahlale?
It is an identification that we normally call positive.
Usho ukuthi ke ilo kuhlonza esithi kuveza umphumela omuhle.
It is an inconclusive result.
Usho ukuthi ke ile mphumela obonakala ukuthi awukwazi ukuthi kungathatha isinqumo ngawo.
We have an elimination that we commonly refer to as negative.
Kukhoma ke lokho ukuthi ke okukhiphayo ke isibhamu esithize ukuthi akusona esebenzile.
And for argument's sake, and correct me again if I'm wrong, I'm not a ballistic expert, there may be a fourth one that is unsuitable for comparison, where the bullet projectile is so damaged that we cannot even put it under a microscope. Is that correct?
Kona umkhankasini la engakuthiwa khona kunenhlamvu engakwazi ukusebenziseka ngoba iba ilimele kakhulu ukuthi ingakwazi ukuqhathaniswa kunjalo.
That is correct. That one refers to when when the bullet cannot be used or the specimen cannot be used for comparison purposes because of damage.
Yebo khona lokho ngoba kusho ukuthi ke kuzobe kukhulunywa lapho ngenhlamvu elimele kakhulu ukuthi ngasetshenziswa ukuqhathanisa.
And as I was going through the literature on these aspects, it says also with inconclusive finding, there are 3 categories under inconclusive. Are you aware of those categories?
Kuthiwa ngalapha ngaphansi lomphumela ongacacile kuthiwa kukhona izigaba ezintathu ezikwazi ukuthi zibonakale ngaphansi kwalowo.
I'm aware of those in the literature, yes, that is correct.
Athi yebo embhalweni ngiyazi ukuthi kukhona lokho.
Can you also elaborate on the 3 categories of inconclusive in brief?
Ukuthi ungakwazi usichazela ukuthi ke imiphumela engacacile enjani?
The first one is called positive inconclusive.
Oqala isayilo kuthiwa umphumela obonakalayo ukuthi awucaci.
Is where in that case there is an agreement of class characteristics.
Lapho kuyabonakala ukuthi kukhona izimpawu ezithile ezibonakalayo.
And some measure of agreement of individual characteristics.
Sekuyabonakala ke nokuthi kukhona ukuvumelana mayelana nezimpawu ezikhona ezingajwayelekile.
But not sufficient enough to make a positive identification.
Kodwa ke kuthiwa nanoma kunjalo lezi zimpawu azilingene ukuthi zingakwazi ukuthi zisetshenziswe ukuhlonza.
There is a negative inconclusive.
Kukhona ke nalokhu kubizwa ukuthi negative inconclusive kusho ukuthi ke ukungacaci okungamukeleki.
In this case, all class characteristics agree.
Sure, class characteristics akhona
with some measure of differences.
Kusho ukuthi ke nanoma kunjalo kusho ukuthi lezi zimpawu kunokwehluka phakathi kwazo.
It's an inconclusive which is leaning slightly towards elimination.
Kusho ke leyo ke incike kakhulu ngasekutheni ingakhishwa.
The first one that I explained is an inconclusive which is slightly leaning towards an inclusion.
Lokuqala ke ila esibona khona ukuthi izimpawu zingathi zigobele ngasekutheni mhlambe zingayezisebenzisekayo.
There's an inconclusive result where all class characteristics agree.
What?
Agree.
Kusho ukuthi khona lapha kwesithathu la kubona khona ukuthi wonke ama-class characteristics ayavumelana.
This type of inconclusive result is not leaning either to the left or right.
Kuthiwa ke lokhu ke akugobeli ngakwesokunxele noma kwesokudla.
In simple terms, it means I don't know.
Kuthi ke ekugcineni umhlaziyi uchaza ukuthi akazi.
because you cannot determine whether or not a specific bullet or was fired by a specific firearm.
Uthi ngoba ke lapho ke akunazo impawu ezitshelayo ukuthi inhlamvu ethize yadutshulwa isibhamu esithize.
Without any inclination towards the positive side or the negative side.
Uthi ke lapho ke akukho ke lutho olukusondeza ngasekutheni yebo noma ukusondeza ngasekutheni cha.
Now, given those range of conclusions, would I be correct that, especially let's focus on, because the other two, inclusive elimination, speak for themselves. Regarding the inconclusive finding, irrespective of the subcategory, that inconclusive finding is a standalone finding, correct?
Manje ke kusho ukuthi ke umphumela ongacaci umphumela ozimele anjalo.
Yes, in terms of our procedure, operational procedure, we have only one inconclusive.
Thina ke ngendlela inqubo yethu sinomphumela wodwa ongacaci.
And at the essence of that is to say with inconclusive,
Then please repeat that.
the essence of inconclusive is this. You cannot say for example, in this case, I don't want to fetch examples that are far-fetched and I'm lost in translation. Pertaining to this case, if an examiner says exhibit F, and which is the firearm, and exhibit the exhibit bullet in this case, I cannot determine either way whether this bullet was fired from this firearm, then that will be an inconclusive finding. That is correct.
Umphumela ongacaci ukuthi umhlaziyi uthi i-exhibit F lapha sikhuluma ngesibhamu usho ukuthi akukho okucacayo ukuthi lesi sibhamu isona esadubula leya nhlamvu ethize.
That is correct, my lord.
Yebo kunjalo.
And let me take it further. With that inconclusive finding, I then produce a report that will be sent back to the IO of the case, the investigating officer, to say, this is my finding. It is inconclusive because I've looked at the bullet, compared it to the test, and yes, the class characteristics are discernible, they are there. And there is some agreement of individual characteristics, but they are not sufficient for me to make a finding that it is a match. Correct?
Kusho ukuthi emva kwalokho kuyisela umbiko oya kumsesho ochaza ukuthi noma zikhona impawu ezibonakalayo azilingene ukuthi ingathatha isinqumo sokuthi nempela isona isibhamu esadubula le nhlamvu.
Yeah, all reports, whether positive, negative, inconclusive, must be sent to the investigating officer.
Yebo imbiko yonke umbiko ovumelayo umbiko ophisana nombiko ongacacile konke kufanele kubuyisele ku-IO.
Now, in the context of what I described to you with the work that Colonel Mangena did, when he said, when I compared Rulof's TB1 and TB2 with Exhibit F, I could not determine on the marks imparted on TB1 and TB2 sufficient marks for an identification. By procedure and what you've just explained now, he was supposed to make a report of that inconclusive finding, correct?
Akushayo ukuthi uRulef sehlolile wathola ukuthi ke azikho impawu ezilingene zokuthi angathatha isinqumo ngoba kungacaci kahle umphumela bafanele abhale umbiko ophindisela ku-IO ochaza ukuthi umphumela ucacile anginjani.
Sorry?
To whom?
I say Mangena, my lord. I'm not saying the rule of sale.
Mangena?
Yes.
Oh, I thought-
Mangena says I made a comparison between TB1
Okay, fine.
and TB2 with Exhibit F.
Yeah.
I didn't say rule of sale
fine.
because rule of sale only did the
Yeah.
test fires.
Okay.
I think this is an oversimplification of the matter.
Yes.
It does not operate like that.
indlela obeke ngayo ubeke kwabalula kakhulu kodwa kusebenzi ngaleyo ndlela.
Analysts are trained. That is why the training is specific and is specialized.
Baqeqeshiwe ke laba abahlaziyi yikho nje umsebenzi wokubaqeqesha ufanele ube uqonde entweni ethize.
They are trained to be able to discern or identify specific features
Yes.
on specimen under examination.
Kufanele bakwazi ukuthi bahlaziye babone impawu ezithile uma behlola.
And make certain conclusions or decisions based on what they see.
Bakwazi futhi nokuthatha izinqumo kuloko abakubhekile.
If an expert, I mean to say an analyst, examine a specimen,
Uma ke kukhona ohlaziyayo ebheka into ethize
and he realizes that on this specimen there is a problem of transferability,
manje uyabona ukuthi kule specimen asisiphethe kukhona ke ungakudluliseki kwempawu
or reproducibility.
noma ke ukuthi zingabuyiseleki izimpawu kaningi.
The analyst is entitled to fire additional tests.
Manje kumhlaziyi uyavunyelwa ukuthi angadubula ke ezinye izinhlamvu.
As the features on the specimen he has observed under the microscope has revealed to him that this is a possible firearm.
Manje uma ukuthi ke ugcine ebonile ukuthi ke ungenzeka ukuthi sona lesi sibhamu uma eloke ebhekile ngapha ehlola lama specimen awaphela.
He will be able to identify, for example, in this case, as it has been from the information that has been supplied to me now, that Mangena examined the full metal jacket tests, actually compared them with the exhibit bullet,
Ngoba sekushiwa ke ukuthi uma ngewathatha lezi inhlamvu zama-full metal jacket waziqhathanisa nenhlamvu i-exhibit bullet
which is of a CMJ type.
uhlobo lwe-CMJ.
He is entitled to fire additional tests
Uvunyelwa ukuthi angadubula amanye ama-test
which are as close as possible to the exhibit.
cishe mhlawumbe asondele kakhulu ekufananeni ne-exhibition bullet
In form and in composition.
ngendlela eyakhwe ngayo futhi ke nokuthi yakhwe nganhloboni yensimbi.
That is what a responsible examiner will do.
Kusho ukuthi ke ilokhu okufanele kwenziwe umhloli owazi umsebenzi wakhe.
So he was within the parameters of the standing operating procedure.
Cha yena kusho ukuthi wayesebenza ngale nqubo le ekusetshenziswa ngayo.
As I've already explained before, that it allows additional test fires to be made.
Njengoba sengishilo ke uvunyelwa ukuthi angadubula ezinye inhlamvu.
It only sets the minimum, but it does not set the maximum.
Kusho ukuthi iyabekisa ukuthi kufanele kudutshulwe inhlamvu ezingakanani ekuqaleni kodwa ayisho ukuthi ke uma usudubule lezo ngaphezulu ke unqunyela ukuthi usungenza ungadubule ezingakanani.
For the known reason of transferability.
Ukuze ke kwazi ukubonakala ukuthi ziyadluliseka enempawu.
Now, at least I'm no longer shouting because my voice was way there with this aircon. Now that I can think clearly, Mangena says, sorry, Colonel Mangena says, I fired additional test fires 3 to 10, TB 3 to 10, because, yes, one of the reasons is that I'm looking for the CMJs because the exhibit bullet is CMJ.
Uthe MANGENA wayefakela ukuthi adubule ezinye inhlamvu number 3 ukuyofika ku 10 ngoba wayefuna ukuthi athole impawu kulelo hlobo le CMJ.
But the second reason is that the nature of the firearm itself, the barrel is worn out, so the impartation or reproducibility of marks is not consistent.
Manje uthi ke futhi ke okunye ukuthi ke lesi sibhamu sasesigugile okudluliseka kwezimpawu kwakungacacile kahle.
I hear that.
Ngiyakuzwa lo.
And I'm not sure how your standards operate. You'll clear it because I'm going to throw these questions for clarification purposes regarding your peer review. When you are given a case to peer review, does he also tell you information like part of the reason is that the bullet, the barrel was worn out, for example, that's why I did not have sufficient marks, or he just gives you, it's a blind peer review, you are not told anything.
Manje uma unikeza umsebenzi ukuthi ubukeze uyatshelwa yena ukuthi ngibe nenkinga yokubona ukuthi umbhobho wesibhamu ngathi usugugile noma unikwe nje ukuthi wena uzosibonela ngalendlela ozohlaziya ngayo.
He didn't give me the details of the case.
Cha ngazange nginike imininingwane ngaleli icala.
I'm not referring to the merits of the case. I'm referring specifically to a ballistic tool mark that he used. Did he tell you that the barrel was worn out through wear and tear?
Angisakhulumi ke ngecala ngikhuluma nje ngembhobho wesibhamu ukuthi wakutshela yena ukuthi ogugile.
He never gave me such information.
Okay.
Cha lolu lwazi azange nginike lona.
Okay. And now we are at a stage, your testimony is that you compare the exhibit bullets with all the test fires, 1 to 10. Is that my understanding?
Ngizwisisa-ke ukuthi waqhathanisa nazo zonke inhlamvu ezazikhona njalo.
I examined all the test bullets that were given to me, including the exhibit.
Ngaqhathanisa zonke lezi inhlamvu engangikwezona ngifaka lapho futhi ke nenhlamvu exhibit.
And for you, as you have gone through all the test fires, you make a determination that TB4 and TB8 gives me the best possible marks where I can make a comparison with exhibit bullet, correct?
Usubhekileka wabona ukuthi uTB4 noTB8 zikunika ke impawu ecace kahle ukuthi ungaqhathanisa kahle. Kanjani?
Yeah, it was just a quick run through all the tests.
Ya ngagijima nje ekubukeni zonke lezi inhlamvu.
And eventually I decided to use TB4 and TB8 for thorough analysis.
Ngase ngikhetha ke ukuthi ngizosebenzisa uTB4 noTB8 ukuze ngenze ke ukuhlaziya okujulile.
Okay. When you say you made a quick run through all of them, then you preferred 4 and 8. What does that quick run entail? TB 3, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10. What does that entail?
It was
kusho ukuthini ke ukuthi wagijima phezulu nje ukubukeni kwakho lezi inhlamvu ukuthi wenzani.
It was just to familiarize myself with the general appearance of the marks
Ngifuna nje ukubona nje ukuthi impawu zinjani kulezi inhlamvu.
and the system of rifling on the tests.
Nokuthi ke kwakusetshenziswa luphi uhlobo le-rifling kule test.
And at the time you were given this, did Colonel Mangena tell you that I have made an inclusion that is a positive match let's start there. Did he tell you that he made a positive match?
Bese kutshelini wakutshela yini uKenan Mangena ukuthi ya khona ngabona ukuthi impela mangiqhathanisa khona umphelo omelo omuhle ngiwutholile.
No, he did not tell me that.
Cha zange angitshele lokho.
Now you make your comparison focusing now on TB4 and 8.
Manje umsebenzi wakho uqhathanisa wawuqonde ngoku TB4 no TB8.
A thorough comparison, yes.
Yebo ngisho ukuthi uqhathanisa okujulile ngakwenza la.
Now, if I understood your evidence in chief yesterday, you started first by, and correct me if I'm wrong, with the methodology or the methods that you used, that you described yesterday, which are pattern matching and consecutive matching trials, CMS, right?
That is correct.
But when I izoluthe indlela osebenzisa i-pattern matching ne-consecutive can you give me the name of the second?
Consecutive matching striations.
Le kuthiwa consecutive matching stri.
Right? And from the charts that you prepared, I'm not going to take you through all the charts. From the charts that you prepared, TB8, as I understand the charts, you use the line counting method, which is CMS, correct?
Ukuthi lapha ku-TB8 wasebenzisa indlela yokubala imigqa ekuthiwa CMS akunjalo.
Just to be very clear,
Yes.
on the approach
Yeah.
or the methods
Yes.
that I followed. I followed the pattern matching method.
Yes.
Yes.
Ya indlela ke engayisebenzisa lapha ngisebenzisa i-pattern matching method.
With the pattern matching method, you are also able to identify both the striations and the impression marks.
Manje ke lapha ke ku-pattern matching method kusho ukuthi ke yila ukwazi ukubheka ukuthi kunemigqa yini and futhi kuneyigodi yini khona la.
As I've already indicated that the two methods are not they are not mutually exclusive, or they are not in opposition to each other.
Kulezi indlela zombili njengoba bese ngishilo azilwisani.
But the current situation is that we use pattern matching at Ballistics South Africa.
Kodwa ke njengoba Ballistics South Africa indlela esiyisebenzisa zayo kakhulu ile pattern matching method.
But it will not be incorrect if one uses CMS because they both subscribe to the theory of identification.
Futhi ke kuzobe kungeyona iphuthu ukusebenzisa i-CMS ngoba nayo ke iyayisebenzisa ke indlela enhle yokuhlola.
And now and remember, on that aspect, I agree with you, that you can start by using pattern matching, and if you see the patterns and they are reproducible, you can even go to line counting, which is CMS. So I'm not faulting you on that aspect, and don't take it like I'm faulting you.
Cha angisho ukuthi ke ngiyakuphikisa ukuthi ungakwazi ukusebenzisa i-pattern matching kuyidlule le kulapha ku-line counting ngaphansi kwe-CMS.
And when we talk about pattern matching, remember, Lieutenant Colonel, I am asking you questions, but I'm learning from you as well. So some of the questions, take it, I'm a layperson when it comes to ballistics and comparisons and the like, right?
Njengoba ngikubuza ke mbuzo hayi ngiyaqhubeka nami ngiyafunda khona engicoshayo njengoba ngingena ubuchwepheshe we-ballistic.
Now, with regard to pattern matching, what we are essentially dealing with, and correct me if I'm wrong, we are dealing with the known non-match, correct? Or are we dealing with both non-matches and known non-matches?
Manje lapha ke sisebenza ngempawu ezaziwayo ezifanayo noma impawu ezaziwayo ezingafani.
The concept of known non-match or known match, actually known non-match, is embodied in the theory of identification. It's not something that can be associated with pattern match only or CMS. It comes from the theory of identification, where both people from CMS and pattern match subscribe to.
Manje uma sibheka lapha impawu ezaziwayo ukuthi azifani akusho ukuthi ke kukhona umehluko phakathi kwalaba abathanda i-pattern machine ne-CMS zombili lezi zisebenzisa indlela ezinhle zokuqhathanisa.
Now, for the sake of my understanding, I've gone through some literature, I've consulted with our expert, Mr. Peterson. And this concept of known non-match still beats me. Can you thresh it out for me so that I understand and then maybe we can move on to other things?
Awungichazeleke nge-known non-match okusho ukuthi ke kungafanani okwaziyo ukubonakalayo okwaziwayo.
Known non-match is when the examiner compares two tool marks.
Kusho ukuthi ke lapha umhlaziyo uqhathanisa ke izimpawu ezishiwa amathuluzi ezimbili.
That he knows that were produced by two different tools.
Yila azikhona ukuthi ke lezi mpawu lezi zashiwa amathuluzi amabili ahlukene.
Those tools can be firearms or anything.
Noma ngabe kuyisibhamu noma okunye.
And he deliberately compares them with each other.
Lapho ke kusho ukuthi ke uyaziqhathanisa zombili.
With the aim of seeking similarities which may exist between them.
Ukuzama ukuthola ukuthi ngabe kukhona yini ukufanana okungabe kukhona phakathi kwazo.
This is what known non-match is based on.
Yilokho ke i-known non-match ezize khona.
It is because even in marks produced by two different tools,
Ingoba kuyenzeka ukuthi ke uma kukhona impawu ezishiwe amathuluzi amabili ahlukene.
there might be a very small degree of correspondence
Kungabe kukhona ke kufanana okuncane okungaba khona
between those two marks,
phakathi kwalezo impawu.
but the degree of similarity will outweigh those differences.
Manje ke ukufanana ke kufanele kube sezingeni elikhulu kakhulu kunokwehlukana.
Actually, I want to say, in tool marks that were produced by the same firearm,
Ka engishoyo ukuthi ke impawu ezishiwe isibhamu esisodwa.
the degree of correspondence will outweigh the differences.
Kusho ukuthi ke ukufanana kuzoba ngaphezulu kakhulu kunokwehlukana.
And in tool marks that were produced, that are known to have been produced by two different tools,
Manje ke impawu ezishiwe amathuluzi amabili ehlukile.
that similarity that exists in them when they are compared with each other
Kusho ukuthi ke ukufanana ke okungatholakala lapho uma uqhathaniswa.
will be outweighed by far by the differences that exist.
Kusho ukuthi ke lokho kufanana kuzobe kukuncane kakhulu uma kuqhathaniswa nokwehlukana.
So the concept of no non-match, as it is coming directly from the FT theory of identification,
Manje ke lo mbono lona ukuthiwa i-known non-match njobe ivela kwa-AFTE.
it says for sufficient agreement to be attained,
Kuthiwa ke ukuze kube nokuvumelana okulingene.
the similarities that exist
Kufanana ke okukhona lapho
must exceed the similarities that are found in the best known non-match.
kusho ukuthi kufanele ibe miningi ngaphezulu kakhulu kunokufanana okutholakala empawini ezivela ezibhamini ezihlukile lokuthiwa i-known non-match.
In simple terms, a known non-match is actually a false positive.
Kuthiwa ke uma sikhuluma nge-known non-match kuthiwa ke into ke ebonakala sengathi yiyo kodwa engelona iqiniso.
If I'm just putting it in simple terms, the marks appear to be similar, to create an impression as if the two marks are having a common origin.
Usho ukuthi lezi impawu lezi ziba nendawo la ezicishe kube sengathi ziyefana ukuze senze ukuthi umuntu ke ongabhekisisile acabanga ukuthi kukhona ukufanana okukhona.
Although it is not the case.
Nanoma ke kungenjalo.
When the whole exhibit is examined around its whole circumference,
Manje kuma sesifubheka indingilizi yonke ke ya lenhlamvu isihlolo,
that those agreements will actually show that they are in the minority.
manje kuzobonakala ukuthi izimpawu lezi ezinokuba sengathi ziyafanana zincane kakhulu.
So that is what best known non-match means.
Yiyona ke into ezamakuchaswa yiloku okuthiwa i-known non-match.
In the AFT theory of identification, the word best known non-match is not used.
Lapha kwe-FT uma kuqhathaniswa lento ka-known non-match ayisetshenziswa.
But there are words which, or the phrase, which is an equivalent of that word.
Khona ke indlela kubekiswa ngayo amagama acishe kuwe acishe afane nalowo.
If I were to read from the FT theory of identification,
Mangibheka lapha ku le theory ye-FT identification,
it says agreement is significant when the agreement in individual characteristics exceed the best agreement demonstrated between tool marks known to have been produced by different tools.
so ke ukuvumelana kwezimpawu kufanele kube ukuvumelana okweqe kakhulu kuloko okuvelayo uma kusetshenziswe amathuluzi ahlukile.
And is consistent with the agreement demonstrated by tools known to have been produced by the same tool.
Kufanele kube can you please read that sentence? I missed something.
And is consistent with the agreement demonstrated by tools known to have been produced by the same tool.
Kuyahambisana ke nokuthi nempawu ezishiwe yithuluzi elifanayo.
So the word that says the agreement must exceed the best agreement demonstrated between tool marks known to have been produced by different tools.
Futhi ke impawu ezishiwa amathuluzi amathuluzi amabili okwaziwayo ukuthi akulona ithuluzi elilodwa ahlukile.
That is where the best known non-match is coming from.
Yilapho evela khona lento ekuthiwa i-best known match.
And that second principle of AFT, where you've sampled a reading from, the word in the glossary of terms of AFT, would I be correct that AFT does not define what is meant by best agreement, correct?
Iqiniso yini ukuthi i-FT ayichazi ukuthi i-best agreement kusho ukuthi ke isivumelwano singcono kunazo zonke kusho ukuthi yini?
No, that is not the vocabulary used by FT. FT uses the word sufficient agreement.
Yes.
Cha i-FT yana ayisebenzisi lawo magama, isebenzisa lokuthiwa sufficient agreement kusho ukuthi isivumelwano esenele.
And it further explains what will constitute sufficient agreement.
Yaqhubeka ichaza ukuthi yini echazwayo ngo-sufficient agreement.
And it uses again the word significance.
Ifuna ke futhi ukusebenzisa ligama elithi significance elichaza ukuthi into ephathekayo.
Which means significant agreement.
Usho ke ukuthi isivumelano esiphathekayo.
And it explains it explains how significant agreement is reached.
Ichaza ukuthi ufinyelela kanjani ke isivumelwano esiphathekayo.
And that is exactly my point. That is, AFT gives this second principle of theory of identification, yet sufficient agreement, which they rely on as a standard that you reach to make a match, an agreement, is not defined. And they say in order for that, there must be a best agreement, the one that we've just quoted. And they also go and qualify with other words. But my point is this. The criticism that has been leveled with the second principle is they use the word that it's secular, it's circuitous. Circuitous meaning we are going round and round in circles. Have you read literature that says the same thing?
FTE ikhuluma nge-sufficient agreement okusho-ke isivumelwane esilingene kodwa-ke iyehlulekile ukuthi ichaze ukuthi yini-ke lesi sivumelwane esilingene ikhuluma ngesivumelwane esingcono kunaso sonke kodwa-ke ekuchazeni kwabo balokhu bejika-jika entweni eyodwa uma belokhu bechaza into abazama ukuyiveza.
What I can say is that FT has never given any statistical method. Currently, we don't use any statistics to demonstrate to demonstrate sufficiency.
FT kusetshenziswa statistic kusho ukuthi asikho statistic esetshenziswayo ukuthi kuchazwe ukuthi insufficiency kusho ukuthi ke ukulinganela kukhulunyiswe kukhulunywa ngani.
It only uses the word sufficient agreement.
I agree with you. I agree with you, Lieutenant Colonel.
Ukuthi isilingane isivumelwane esilingene.
And that compels the examiner,
yes,
when he's viewing the tool marks, yes, under the microscope.
Yes.
He must consider the total weight of correspondence or agreement.
Yes.
Against the disagreement that exists. But we have not yet arrived at a point where we can demonstrate that statistically. Like when it is done in DNA analysis, for example.
Now, I'm just going to read here because I said I want to thresh out this concept of best known and match so that when I leave here, I understand it properly. Now, from where you've read that agreement is significant when it exceeds the best agreement demonstrated between tool marks known to have been produced by different tools, and the part that I'm interested in is the one that I'm reading now. Consistent with agreement demonstrated by tool marks known to have been produced by the same tool. You see that?
I see it.
Now that and it's taken with the third principle of theory of identification, which I may also read quickly because I want to combine my question between these two principles.
Okay, so you're leaving me behind.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Ngoba. Sorry, Mr. Ngoba. So just read from the part, he has already read it in record, which says, and is consistent with agreement demonstrated by tool marks known to have been produced by the same tool.
Kuthoke statement esikhuluma ngokuvumelana okulingene sichaza ukuthi ke kukhona lokho phakathi kwempawu ezimbili uchaza ukuthi kufanele kube nokuvumelana kwezimpawu ezitholakala entweni eyodwa uma ukuthi ke ubuningi ke balezi impawu lezi zingakwazi ukuthi ziholele ekutheni esinye isibhamu singabe sisetshenzisiwe ukuthi sishiye lezo impawu and futhi ke lokho ke kuyinto ekude kakhulu ukuthi ingamukeleka njengengasetshenziswa.
And I'm saying that I want to pose a question to you, but it's also related to this statement you've read and the third principle of theory of identification, which reads, currently the interpretation of individualization or identification is subjective in nature, founded on scientific principles and based on the examiner's training and experience. Right?
Lana ukubuka izimpawu lokubusa ncike kakhulu ekuthele umuntu uqeqeshwe kangakanani.
Now my question is this: when they say on this aspect, consistent with agreement demonstrated by tool marks known to have been produced by the same tool, what it says to an examiner, that's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong. What it says to an examiner, it says, when you are looking at this tool, the non-match, comparing non-matches, you as an examiner, according to your training and experience and the scientific principles that apply to ballistics, you then sit and you go through a catalog in your memory and say, I have seen, say for example in this case, these marks on this bullet before imparted in another test that I've done in my experience, imparted by a C75 Luger. So based on what I'm looking at now as my consistent with tool marks demonstrated by as a known match, known match. I've seen this before in other tests. Now looking at my experience and my training, this tells me this tool must have produced these marks. Is that not what it says in simple terms?
Cabanga ukuthi uma ukuthi wake wasibona isibhamu esithize sishiya izimpawu ezinjengalezo sibonayo uyakwazi ukusho ukuthi cha lezi impawu lezi zingabe sishiwe yilolu hlobo lesibhamu kusho ukuthi ke nalowo mqondo ke lo uyawuletha ekuhlaziyeni kwakho.
Non-match, as I've already explained,
yes,
that specimen, I mean to say tool marks,
yes,
known to have been produced by different tools are microscopically compared with each other.
Kusho ukuthi ke impawu ezishiwe ezibhamu ekwaziwayo ukuthi zehlukene kodwa ke lezi impawu lezi ziyahlolwa ngaphansi kwe-microscope ziqhathaniswe.
So as the examiner has been doing that throughout his career,
Kusho ukuthi ke njengoba elokhu eqhubeka ke umhlaziyi emsebenzini wakhe wokuhlaziya,
he's able to have a picture of what of the extent of that agreement.
kusho ukuthi ke agcine sebonile ukuthi leso sivumelano leso sinjani.
The extent of the agreement on tool marks known to have been produced by different tools.
Kusho ukuthi ke ugcine ezile ukuthi zinjani impawu ezishiwa emathuluzi ahlukene.
That will happen from time to time and throughout his career.
Lokhu kuzokwenzeka nje kumele kweqhubeka esebenza.
When he try to establish the best known non-match.
Manje kumele kweqhubeka ke ezama ukuthola ukuthi yipi i-best known non-match kusho ukuthi ke ukungafanani okwaziwayo.
So he will eventually know that even though there's some agreement, some element of agreement between tool marks known to have been produced by different tools,
Kusho ukuthi ke njengoba ezoloke azi ukuthi kukhona impawu ezishiwe amathuluzi ahlukile.
the significance of correspondence, I mean to say the significance of the difference that exists,
Kusho ukuthi ke ukwehlukana ke kwehlukana kwa lezi impawu ezingafani
will allow him to make an elimination finding.
kusho ukuthi kuzomsiza ukuthi akwazi ukuchitha leli thuluzi njengoba ezobe ehlolile wathola umphumela.
So the best the best known match allows him only to know the extent of the agreement that can exist in tool marks known to have been produced by two different tools.
Ushuthi lo kuzomsiza ukuthi azi ukuthi lezi ibhamu ezisetshenzisiwe zehlukile azifani.
Okay. Now, regarding your peer review, if I understand correctly from the explanation given by other ballistic analysts who have appeared here in court, the FMJ is a harder compound bullet and CMJ is a softer compound bullet, and therefore the impartation of marks on both will be different.
Ukushiyeka kwempawu enhlamvini uhlobo le-FMJ kuzohluka kulezi impawu ezitholakala kulolu hlobo lwenhlamvu ewu-CMJ ngoba insimbi lezi aziqinanga ngokufana.
I agree the transfer of marks might not be the same.
Yebo ngiyavumelana ukuthi ukwedluliseka kwezimpawu angeke kufane.
Now, in the light of that, for me, my understanding of a peer review is that you're reviewing the work, the actual work that Colonel Mangena did. That is, you are only reviewing TB 5 and 9 to see whether you can find the same things or the same marks that he found, so that you can confirm that TB 5 and TB 9.
So ushuthi wena ukugeza uTB 5 no TB 9 nje ukuthi ubone ukuthi ke lokathi ukubonile ukutholile yini anginjalo.
But before you answer, let me qualify this. In your answer to Mr. Mgomezulu, you said that you had access to the 10 test fires, but your preference was for 4 and 8 because it's a representative, those are representative specimens because they are fired from the same firearm, correct?
When I work at ukusebenzisa u4 and 8 ngoba ke zidutshulwe isibhamu esifanayo anginjalo.
Yes, because all test fires are fired from the same firearm.
Yebo ngoba
I can use the
zonke ezisetshenziswa ukutesta zidutshulwa ngesibhamu esisodwa.
I can use the representative samples.
Ngingasebenzisa ke amasampuli nje amele lezi ezinye inhlamvu.
My Lord, through the corner of my eye, when I was asking the question, I saw my Lord shaking his head. I'm not sure whether he was agreeing or disagreeing.
You're saying he's basically choosing 4 and 8 to the exclusion of the other fired bullets, when his evidence is that he tested all, under the microscope, all the fired bullets by Mangena. Is that not so, sir?
That is correct, my
That's
lord.
how I understand English.
No, that was not even my question.
And now you say he prefers.
No, that was not even my
Okay, fine.
question. I say a peer review, and I'm going to repeat it without fear, favor, prejudice. A peer review, when somebody says peer review this for me, he's actually referring to the actual work that he has done. In this instance, Mangena confirmed positive matches on 5 and 9. And my question to you, go on.
Uma kuthiwa peer review kusho ukuthi kubukeza umuntu naye onalolu lwazi olufana nayo nolwakho. Methi ufuna uyobukeza lo msebenzi lo owenze kusho ukuthi hambe uyohlola ukuthi ngempela lokho akutholile kuyafanana yini.
So the basis of my question is this, and you may disagree, is that my understanding was that he will give you TB 5 and 9 for you to say, here, peer review this for me and see what you come up with, without telling you I have made it positive, I've made it somehow, so that you are reviewing the same work that he did. And I'll tell you where the problem lies after this.
Kushuthi ke yena ke mina ngendlela engizwisisa ngayo ukuthi uzokunika u5 and 9 athi mina ngihlolile lana u5 and 9 khona umphumela engutholile ngicela ukuthi uhlole kodwa yena ngeke akutshela ukuthi umphumela walokuhlola kwakhe yini.
We must first agree that all those tests were fired in a single firearm.
Yes.
Sayisizwana ukuthi wonke la ma-test bullet ayedutshulwe isibhamu esisodwa.
And as I've said, that the verifier of findings does not redo the work.
Njengoba sengishilo ke ozobukeza umsebenzi akaqaleli phansi wenza umsebenzi.
The verifier of findings can take any test, or all of them, or anyone.
Namanje ke lo obuyezayo angathatha nanoma yipi test noma athathe akhethe ukuthi uzothatha mangaki.
Because all of them were fired in a single fire.
Ngoba ke wonke zonke lezi inhlamvu zasidutshule isibhamu esodwa.
It's not a case where we can say TB4 is coming from firearm A, TB8 is coming from firearm B.
Akusho ukuthi uTB4 mhlambe uvela esibhamini sokuqala noma uTB5 uvela esibhamini sesibili.
All those samples have a common origin.
Zonke ke lezi inhlamvu zivela esibhamini esodwa.
That is why I'm using the word representative.
Yikho ke ngikhuluma lo ukuthi ke emele.
TB4 represent the rest of them. All of them.
uTB4 umele zonke lezi inhlamvu.
And so with TB8,
Nakanjalo noTB8.
and so with TB5,
Nakanjalo noTB5.
and so with TB9.
Nakanjalo noTB9.
Because all of them were fired by the same firearm.
Ngoba zonke lezi inhlamvu zadutshulwa isibhamu esodwa.
And it is known because they were fired as tests.
Ngoba kuyaziwa futhi ukuthi zadutshulwa ngoba zasidutshulwa isibhamu esodwa makuhlolwa.
100% on the same page with you. Hundreds, I'm not faulting you anyhow. Now the dilemma, and maybe you may unravel it, we may find that it's not a dilemma. Colonel Mangena says TB8 is an FMJ.
Ukhona manje uthi TB8 uFMJ.
And previously in his comparison, he had made that inconclusive.
Ngaphambilini uthe umehlola wabona sengathi akukho umphumelo ocacayo.
And now you come, you do your own independent peer review, then the very same FMJ that Mangena says he couldn't make it, and he made it inconclusive. You make it an inclusion.
Manje wena ke uthe umusufika kwathatha lezi zinye inhlamvu yena lazibone sengathi azicacile wazibona wena wasenza inhlamvu esifanele sifakwe ngaphakathi.
What I can say is that when bullets are fired from the firearm, the material of those bullets also play a role.
Engifuna ukusho ukuthi makukhona inhlamvu ezidutshulwayo kusho ukuthi ke lensimbi esetshenziswe ukwakha leyo nhlamvu nakhona kunomthelela.
As some materials are harder than others.
Ngoba ekukhona ke insimbi eziqinile kunezinye
Or softer than others.
noma ezithambile kunezinye.
It's not only about the material of the exhibit. There are also other variables that come into play.
Kukhona ke ezinye izinto nazo esingabukwa khona ukuqina kwenhlamvu kuphela.
We have, even if we have 2 9mm bullets
Noma singabe sana inhlamvu ezimbili ezamahlobo le-9mm
coming from different manufacturers,
ezivela ke kubakhi abehlukene.
the other one might be slightly oversized.
Enye ke ngathola ukuthi inkulu kancane.
And that is a concept that is well known in ballistics.
Enye ke izinto ezaziwa kakhulu ku-ballistic.
Both of them are 9mm, but the other one is oversized.
Zombili nanoma ziwu-9mm khona engathi inkulu kakhulu.
But in terms of micromillimeters,
Lapho ke ubukhulu lobu bukhuluma ngama-micromillimeters kusho ukuthi kuhlolwa lapha kukalwa ngama-micromillimeters kusho ukuthi isilinganiso singaphansi kakhulu ku-millimeter.
you may find another bullet which is undersized.
Singathola ukuthi lapho khona nenhlamvu encanyana.
But it is also called 9mm because it falls within the specifications.
nayo ke ingabizwa ngokuthi 9 mm ngoba egcineni iwela ngaphansi kwesilinganiso se9 mm.
As the specifications range from the minimum to the maximum.
Ngoba ke uma kuchazwa ke ukuthi izipho ezifakwayo ngaphakathi kukhona ezincane kuleso silinganiselo ebese kuba nezinkulu.
So when the bullet is between that, it's still a 9 mm.
So uthi ke inhlamvu kumiphakathi kwaleso silinganiso ithathwa ngokuthi 9 mm.
The other variable could be the wear and tear on the barrel interior.
Okunye ke ukuthi ukuguga ke kwangaphakathi kwembhobho yesibhamu.
Or sometimes just the nature of the design of rifling.
Mhlambe ke asithi ke nje indlela ke kwenziwe ngayo le misele ngaphakathi kwesibhamu.
So those variables will affect or will have an influence on the transfer of marks from the interior of the barrel to the bullet itself.
Lokho kuzoba nomthelela ekutheni ke impawu zidluliseka kanjani kusuka esibhamini ukuya kulezi inhlamvu ezidutshulwa leso sibhamu.
That is why the examiner is allowed to fire several tests.
Yikho ke umhlaziyi evunyelwa ukuthi angadubula inhlamvu eziningana.
If bullet 1 did not pick, did not get sufficient transfer of marks,
Uma inhlamvu yokuqala ingakutholanga impawu ezidluliselwe kuyona,
and bullet number 10 received sufficient transfer,
manje uma usubheka ke inhlamvu number 10 wathola ukuthi yona inempawu ezilingene,
we cannot write a report, 2 reports,
angeke sikwazi ukubhala imibiko emibili
and say bullet number 1 is inconclusive with the firearm.
angeke sithi inhlamvu yokuqala ke usho ukuthi ke ayicaci,
And in another report say bullet number 10 is positive with the firearm.
bese ke sithi ke inhlamvu leyo number 10 yona iyacaca.
Whilst we know that bullet number 1 and bullet number 10 have a common origin.
Ukuthi siyazi ukuthi inhlamvu yokuqala number 10 ziphuma entweni eyodwa.
So that is the essence of firing several shots.
Yikona ke ukwenza ukuthi kudutshulwe izinhlamvu eziningana.
Some features which are visible on groove number 1 of test number 1
Kusho ukuthi ke khona ke impawu ezikwazi ukuthi zibonakale emseleni wokuqala kwi-test yokuqala
will not be visible on groove number 1 of test number 10.
ngenzeka ukuthi zingabonakali emseleni wokuqala kodwa kwi-test yeshumi.
Test number 10 might have certain features on groove number 3, for example.
Manje le nhlamvu yeshumi ngathola ukuthi ke emseleni wesithathu ngaba nempawu ezithize
That were not transferred sufficiently to groove number 3 of test number 1.
Zingadlulisekanga ngendlela enhle emseleni wesithathu enhlamvini yokuqala.
So the examiner is allowed to take the sample which is having the best transfer.
Manje umhloli ke uyavumela ukuthi angayofuna ke inhlamvu angayisebenzisa ebonakala ukuthi impawu zidluliseke ngendlela enhle.
Or alternatively, the sample that is able to see sufficiency on it.
Nokuthi ke mhlambe sithi le nhlamvu yena athe uma ibheka ubona ukuthi cha inempawu ezibonakala kahle kuyena ezicacile.
Colonel, that was a mouthful. We'll continue after the long adjournment. My Lord, is after 1. May we take the long adjournment?
Yeah, all the time then, Mr. Baloyi, after 1.
13:05, my lord.
So we can take it 2.
Yes.
Okay, 2 o'clock, we're back.